I always thought love like that only happened in movies, that someone like me, young, uncertain, just living day by day, could never feel it. But then he came into my life, a 36-year-old billionaire, and everything I thought I knew about love completely changed. Before we dive into my story, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an unforgettable story like this one. I've always prided myself on being independent, building a life I could be proud of. At 29, I had a career that demanded everything from me, friends who kept me grounded, and a small circle of family who cheered me on. But beneath the surface, there was this quiet ache I tried to ignore, the kind that whispers when you're alone at night, reminding you that maybe, just maybe, love like the kind you read about in books or see in movies isn't meant for someone like you. I'd been through heartbreaks, subtle ones and crushing ones, and each left a scar that made me question my worth, my appeal, and whether anyone could ever love me deeply, wholly, without reservation. I tried to convince myself that maybe I was too young to need that kind of love, or maybe too old to still hope for it, but the truth was, I longed for it more than I cared to admit. There were moments when I caught myself daydreaming, imagining someone who would look at me and see not just the surface, but all the layers beneath. Little did I know that someone extraordinary was about to appear in my life, and everything I thought I knew about love was about to be rewritten. I remember the day I met him like it was etched into my mind, every detail sharp and alive. It wasn't one of those over-the-top movie-style introductions, but there was something about the way he carried himself that made the air around him feel different. I first noticed him across the room, and even from a distance, there was a presence, a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention, but somehow claimed it anyway. He wasn't flashy or loud. He didn't need to be. And yet, something about the way he looked at people, genuinely listening, genuinely noticing, made me pause. When our eyes finally met, I felt that odd mix of curiosity and nervous anticipation. I wasn't used to that. People rarely made me feel seen in that way. As he approached, I noticed the subtle details, the calm steadiness of his steps, the warmth in his smile, the way he greeted everyone around him with a sincerity that felt almost rare. He extended a hand, and when I shook it, there was a firmness, a reassurance, like he silently said, "You're exactly where you should be." We started talking, at first about trivial things, the kind of small talk that usually fades quickly. But with him, even the simplest words carried a weight, a depth, and I found myself smiling more freely than I had in years. He asked questions, really asked them, and when I answered, he remembered. I caught myself thinking, how often does someone actually remember what you say? It was disarming in a way I hadn't expected. I left that day with my mind spinning, replaying the sound of his laughter, the way he looked at me like I mattered more than I thought possible. I told myself not to get carried away, that first impressions rarely lasted. But deep down, a quiet, stubborn part of me knew this encounter was different. Something had shifted in me, a subtle pull I couldn't ignore. And though I had no idea then, that brief meeting would mark the beginning of a love that would challenge everything I thought I knew about being loved, truly and completely. After that first encounter, I couldn't stop thinking about him. It was as if a quiet thread had been tugged inside me, something I hadn't realized was dormant. Every time my phone buzzed, I secretly hoped it was him, even though we hadn't exchanged more than a few messages. When we finally met again, it wasn't some grand, dramatic gesture. It was just coffee, laughter, and hours slipping by unnoticed. And yet, in that ordinary moment, everything felt extraordinary. He had this way of making conversation flow effortlessly, like he could sense the rhythm of your thoughts before you even spoke them. I caught myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone in years, small vulnerabilities that I usually guarded fiercely. And instead of judging, he listened, genuinely interested, his eyes holding a warmth that made me feel safe. I realized then that connection wasn't just about chemistry or attraction, it was about being seen and understood. And for the first time in a long while, I felt both. It wasn't just the way he made me laugh or the way he remembered the tiniest details I casually mentioned. It was the ease, the natural flow of being around him, like everything I thought was complicated about love suddenly made sense. I found myself anticipating our conversations, replaying his words in my mind, feeling the subtle excitement of a spark that refused to die out. Even in moments of silence, there was comfort, a look, a shared smile, a touch on the arm. It all carried meaning, and I realized that connection wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, steady, and magnetic. I had always thought I was too young, or maybe too inexperienced, to be loved this deeply. But with him, I felt a depth I had never known. By the time I walked away that evening, I knew something significant had shifted. It wasn't just attraction, it was the beginning of a bond that promised more than just fleeting romance. Deep down, I sensed that this was the start of a story that would challenge everything I thought I knew about love. And I was ready to follow it wherever it would lead. It wasn't long before I realized that being around him made me feel things I had spent years avoiding. I had built walls so high around my heart that I didn't think anyone could climb them. But with him, those walls didn't feel like a necessity. They felt unnecessary, almost heavy, and I found myself quietly letting them fall, brick by brick. I remember one evening, sitting across from him, my hands trembling slightly as I spoke about past heartbreaks, moments where I'd been left questioning my worth. I expected polite nods or empty reassurances, but instead he listened, truly listened. There was no rush to fix me, no need to offer grand advice, just presence, just patience. And in that simple act, I felt a kind of love I hadn't thought existed outside of books or films. I realized that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was trust, and it was sacred. With him, it wasn't scary, it was freeing. I began sharing little things I'd never admitted to anyone, my fears of not being enough, the quiet longing to be adored for who I really was, and even my moments of doubt about love itself. And every time I spoke, he responded not with judgment, but with warmth and understanding. He remembered my words, held them close, and made me feel seen in a way that no one ever had. I started noticing the subtle ways he reassured me, soft touches on my shoulder, thoughtful messages during the day, and that gentle smile that said without words, "I see you, and you are enough." It was in those moments that I realized love wasn't just a feeling. It was an action, a consistency, a devotion that didn't need to be loud to be undeniable. By the end of that night, I felt a mix of awe and disbelief. Could someone really care so deeply, so completely about someone like me? The thought lingered, but with it came a strange comfort. Maybe, just maybe, I was ready to be loved in a way I had always secretly dreamed of, but never truly believed was possible. And little did I know, this was only the beginning of a love that would change everything I thought I knew about myself and the world. Being with him was unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't just the laughter, the stolen glances, or the soft touches that lingered longer than necessary. It was the way he made me feel fully alive, fully seen, fully loved. For the first time, love didn't feel like a risk. It felt like home. Each moment with him carried an intimacy that went beyond words, beyond gestures, beyond what I had thought possible. It started with the little things, messages that made me smile at unexpected moments, remembering how I liked my coffee, or noticing when I seemed tired and gently offering to carry the weight I didn't even ask him to share. And then there were the bigger things, the moments that left me breathless. Quiet dinners where he listened to every word, unplanned weekends that felt like adventures, and gestures that weren't meant to impress anyone but me. I realized that love was not just an emotion, it was a language, and he spoke it fluently. I caught myself thinking about him constantly, not in an anxious or needy way, but in a way that felt natural, comforting, like our lives were threading together with a rhythm I didn't want to escape. There was a safety in his presence that erased the ghosts of past heartbreaks, the fears that I had carried for years, the nagging voice that whispered, I wasn't enough. With him, I was more than enough. I was adored, celebrated, and cherished. And in quiet, ordinary moments, sitting side by side, holding hands without speaking, just sharing the silence, I felt the depth of a love that was steady, unwavering, and completely devoted. I realized that true love isn't loud or dramatic. It's constant, gentle, and transformative. It lifts you up without changing who you are and makes you believe in yourself in ways you never imagined. For the first time, I didn't doubt being worthy of love. I didn't second guess his feelings or my own. I simply let myself feel, let myself hope, and let myself trust. In his love, I discovered a version of myself I hadn't known, a version that was unafraid, open, and alive to the beauty of being truly, deeply loved. Even in the midst of something so beautiful, doubts began creeping in. It wasn't about him, not really. It was about me, my insecurities, the years of heartbreak that had left faint scars I didn't even know were still there. I found myself questioning if I was truly worthy of a love that felt so profound, so unwavering. I wondered if the age difference mattered more than I wanted to admit. Could someone at 36 really see all of me? Or was he just enamored with the idea of me? The questions spun in my mind, quiet but persistent, like whispers I couldn't ignore. Sometimes I caught myself testing him in subtle ways, delaying responses to texts, speaking guardedly, even overanalyzing small gestures. And each time he met my walls, not with frustration, but with patience. His calm presence reminded me that love isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, trust, and showing up even when doubts arise. He didn't rush me. He didn't demand explanations. He simply stayed, steady and reassuring, letting me navigate my fears while silently proving that his love was real. Society's expectations loomed too, in subtle conversations and sideways glances. People would ask questions, make assumptions, or imply that the relationship might not last. I felt the pressure, the fear of judgment, and the echo of past voices telling me love like this was too good to be true. But in those moments, he became my anchor. His unwavering belief in us reminded me that what we share isn't about age, opinion, or circumstance. It's about the bond we've built, the trust we've nurtured, and the love we feel for each other. By confronting my doubts and insecurities, I began to see them not as obstacles, but as reminders of how far I had come. Love, I realized, wasn't about never feeling uncertain. It was about choosing to trust, even when fear whispers otherwise. And in choosing to trust him, I was slowly discovering the courage to fully embrace a love that I had once believed was beyond my reach. There was a moment, one evening I will never forget, when everything he had shown me over time crystallized into a single, undeniable proof of love. It wasn't a grand public declaration or a flashy gesture. It was something far more profound. I had been quietly carrying a weight, a personal struggle that I hadn't shared with anyone, not even my closest friends. I thought I had to bear it alone, but somehow he sensed it. Without me saying a word, He stepped into that space with a calm determination that left me speechless. He didn't offer cliches or empty reassurances. Instead, he took action. He listened when I finally opened up, offered help without ever making me feel weak, and supported me in a way that made me realize love is as much about presence and commitment as it is about passion. I remember looking at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, and feeling a depth of care I had never experienced before. In that moment, all my fears, the doubts about being too young, too inexperienced, or even too vulnerable, just melted away. It was in the way he stayed with me, patiently and unwaveringly, through something I had always thought I had to face alone, that I truly understood what it meant to be loved. I realized then that love wasn't just about the happy moments, the laughter, or the romantic gestures. It was about being there when it mattered most, when life was messy, and when the heart needed reassurance without conditions. That night, as I looked at him, I felt a surge of emotions: gratitude, relief, awe, and a quiet joy that seemed to hum through my entire being. I whispered to myself, almost in disbelief, that someone could love me this completely, so naturally, without needing me to be anyone other than who I am. And in that defining moment, I knew without a shadow of doubt that this was the kind of love people spend a lifetime searching for. I was no longer just hoping to be loved. I was living it, breathing it, and finally believing that I was worthy of a love so deep it could change everything. Looking back on everything, I can hardly believe the journey I've been on. There was a time when I questioned if I was worthy of love, a time when I told myself that deep, unwavering affection was something other people experienced, not someone like me. I built walls, guarded my heart, and convinced myself that being independent meant I didn't need anyone else. But now, after everything I've experienced with him, I see how wrong I was. Love isn't about losing yourself. It's about finding someone who makes you feel seen, supported, and celebrated, even in your quietest, most imperfect moments. Being with him transformed the way I view not just love, but myself. I realized that vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength, and allowing someone to see your true self is one of the bravest things you can do. He showed me that love doesn't demand you to be flawless. It simply asks you to be open, authentic, and willing to trust. Every gesture, every word, every shared silence with him reinforced the lesson that love is patient, consistent, and beautifully transformative. I also discovered a new kind of courage within myself. I no longer fear letting go of control, no longer doubt my worthiness of being loved deeply. I feel empowered because I've experienced a love that uplifts me rather than diminishes me, that encourages me to grow while holding me steady. It's a rare balance, one that has reshaped my understanding of what it means to truly connect with another person. Now, I can see my life in a new light. I am still independent, ambitious, and strong, but I am also loved in a way that fills the spaces I didn't even know were empty. He has shown me that love can be gentle, fierce, and transformative all at once, and that the right person doesn't just enter your life, they awaken the parts of you that have been quietly waiting to be seen. I thought I was too young, too inexperienced, too guarded to be loved this deeply, but now I know better. I've lived it, felt it, and I will never forget it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more true love stories. And remember, love often finds you when you least expect it.